Thank you all for your patience while we had a little technical difficulties, and welcome to our Black History Month, which is every day for us at First Repair and for you all as well. But welcome to the meeting today. Gonna go ahead and get us started. I want to pull up the agenda to make sure I don't miss anything. Awesome. So welcome. We do hope that you share this meeting widely. This meeting is one that is open to everyone. We have so much that is happening in the movement. Forget about what you're hearing about in the federal government. Our organizations, our partners are still fighting the good fight. Momentum is happening everywhere. You'll hear more about that when you hear your regional reports. I want to lift up, if you are not participating in the regional strategy sessions, I recommend that you do so. You will be hearing from those leaders shortly. And we always start these meetings with partner updates. Before we do that, if it's your first meeting, we want to make sure that you are aware of the regional meetings and that you do participate. And we want to make sure that you are familiar with First Repair, firstrepair.org. We have a ton of information there, including more information about our physical space, the National Resource Center for State and Local Reparations, which some of you were able to visit this past December. That has officially launched, and including our library, which is managed by my colleague and child, Bailey Rue. And those books have been cataloged as well. So real proud of that. Also, if you have any recommended books that a movement leader or our ally must have, please send that recommendation to info@firstrepair.org. And as we are able, we will get the books. We're also accepting donated books. So thank you to those that have donated books, because it's really made a big difference. And then in terms of other updates, that was really it. We continue to work with cities all across the United States. I actually just had a great, really promising presentation with GARE. If any of you are familiar with GARE, it is good to know that our government public administrators are focused on racial justice and equity, and also reparations. And so if you have a GARE representative, you want to make sure that you let them know that you are working on reparations in your community. And I will be presenting later today a keynote at Northeastern that's having a reparations conference. And so there's no shortage of activity that's happened. Trump hasn't scared anybody. Milestones continue to come forth, and you'll hear about more of those from our colleagues and partners. Next, I would like to introduce, I don't know if there's anybody from Redress Network on. We do know that Linda is on a research sabbatical right now in Amsterdam, not Amherst, Massachusetts. But is there anybody here from Redress Network? Seeing none. Is Virginie here, or a colleague of Virginie's from International Center for Transitional Justice? Seeing none, we will jump into, I don't see that Cam is on here, but I will ask Brother Jamoke if he could share any Reparations United updates that we might need to know about. I see you smiling. Do you want me to do it? Okay. So I can say I know that Reparations United has been lead in advancing slavery disclosure and redress ordinances hyper locally in cities and states. And the biggest milestone to discuss is I'm also managing the waiting room. 1 second. I was wondering what that was. They're trying to get in. So the biggest milestone is that Cam and his colleagues have led the introduction of a slavery disclosure and redress bill, one that has a redress component, where there have been many redress slavery disclosure bills that haven't had a redress component. So this was introduced in the last few weeks at the state of Illinois. A lot of promise behind it, a lot of excitement from the Black Caucus there, and there is an expectation that it will be successful in passing. And so Cam has, with his legal partners, created a model ordinance that we all can use in our cities and states and villages. And if you are interested in that, please do follow reparationsunited.org or email Cam directly at cam@reparationsunited.org and learn more. There's a lot of information that's available on the website as well. And then I don't know if I see Sister Nikichi here either.
Can I just say briefly?
Yes.
Just add to that. Yeah, just for people who may not be familiar. So Slavery Disclosure Act is basically looking at corporations as they do business with your city or your state and saying that if they have to do research on themselves and make sure that they don't have any connections to slavery. And if they do have any connections to slavery, then they have to put money into a reparations fund. And so, as Robin said, years ago, we had many cities and states that were passing slavery disclosure acts, but that didn't have the element of making sure that they put money into the fund. But also, the city or state is not supposed to do business with them until they do that. So there's just a little more background on that.
Awesome. Thank you, Brother Jamoke. Appreciate it. My advice. That's why he's my advisor, because I forget stuff. So that way he catches everything. I'm so grateful for Jamoke. And so moving on, I don't see that Sister Nikichi is here, but by show of virtual hands, who's going to the rally in May? Well, I'm going First Repair. Jean-Pierre is going, Jamoke. I know that some others are going here on the call, but Nikichi is spearheading through Reparations Education Project, a reparations rally that will be in DC in May, a date in May that I don't have offhand. Please follow Reparations Education Project to stay informed of
May
that.
17th.
May 17th, thank you. There are busloads of folks going, and there is a sponsorship opportunity that is ongoing with special opportunities until tomorrow, actually, until the end of this month. But please find out more about that, and we look forward to seeing everyone there in May.
Hey, Robin, where can we get a flyer or something like that? Or
we'll try to get a link before this call is over and put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a National Reparations Network.org.
Okay. Thank you.
Website.
And with that, I have the absolute pleasure to introduce my colleagues. These are our regional leaders that will be working with you based on your region. These are folks that you could speak to directly when you reach a barrier, or say you have a special resource that you think has been very helpful to you. It might be helpful to all of us. This is the work that happens in these strategy sessions. There's some reporting, but more than reporting, we want outcomes to come out of the strategy session. So we're looking to work through barriers. I can't say enough about what the South region did under the leadership of Jamoke in organizing quickly to kill the anti-reparations bill that was being passed in the Tennessee Assembly. These are the things we want to do, not just to report, but actually to win reparations. And so with that, in this order, if you can just unmute yourself and give your report. South region, Jamoke, Ifateo. East region is Attorney Jean-Pierre Brutus. Midwest region is Dr. Jeffrey Trask, and the West region is Sister Davida Ingram. Thank you.
All right, greetings, everyone. So first of all, the South region meets on the first Tuesday of each month, the first Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. So that's our monthly meeting dates. So reporting out, so one of the success stories we have is that the Asheville Reparations Stakeholders Authority building was donated to them by the Presbyterian Church for their use to do their work. Also also reporting out the City of Atlanta Reparations Task Force is still kind of getting up and started, but we are working on our bylaws now, so it's making some progress. the Fulton County Reparations Task Force has stopped meeting on a regular basis as they just decided to really focus in and hone in on completing their harm report. They had contracted with some researchers to do the research, and now they're just like bringing it all together. And also wanted to mention a resource. Brother Rodrigo has the, one of the leading public research organizations that does polling. If anybody's interested there, he's worked with the California Reparations Movement. His name of his company is Evitaris, Evitarus. I just put it in the chat. So they do like polling and that kind of thing. And then also Sister Lady Sunshine has produced a deck of cards on the reparations movement that could be used with groups and youth groups as well. So we want to make that resource, let people know about that resource as well. And that is the South report. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Jean-Pierre Brutus, and it's good to see you all. I'm going to give a brief overview of the East and now the new region, the East slash Mid-Atlantic. All right, and so we've got a nice group of folks in this exciting new region, which I'm really pleased about. So just to give you a heads up about New York, the New York State Commission um, has hired an executive director. They're also going to be hiring additional staff. There's an upcoming listening session from the New York State Commission on March 3rd in Rochester. Um, Also, the grassroots organization New Yorkers Reparations had a in-person meeting last month in New York City. Um, and they will have their monthly meeting today at 3:30 virtually, and anyone can join. You don't have to be a New Yorker to join. You can go to NewYork4Reparations.com to join. And also one thing I did forget to mention is that the East slash Mid-Atlantic region meets monthly on the fourth Tuesday of every month at 5 p.m. Eastern. Today's meeting for the New Yorkers Reparations, we will have a member of the New York City Racial Equity Commission who will join the first half of the meeting. In Maine, Maine doesn't currently have a lot of activity on reparations advocacy, so some folks have met together with Reverend Peter Swar from the Trinity Church, who's done a lot of organizing work. Mark Wargraft is leading that organizing. In Maryland, there is some work happening at the state level. The Braxton Institute last week submitted testimony in support of Senate Bill 469 that would establish a commission to study reparations in Maryland. There is a companion bill in the Senate, which is Senate Bill 1422. Before the bill is heard for a floor vote, or there has still additional hearings that has to go through. In Greenbelt, Maryland, their commission is working with the African American Redress Network to hold some small scale listening sessions. They see they need additional help with outreach to the community. Their current ways of outreach are not helping, and I think radio was suggested as one. Also in DC, the DC City Council just unanimously passed the bill to establish a reparations task force in DC. The mayor hasn't, she declined to actually support it, but it's right now it's basically in a period for under review for congressional review until March 6th. So they're trying to keep it under the radar. The name reparations was not in the title of the bill to help it stay under the radar so that this Congress would not review it as part of the DC status as obviously not a state. Also, as Robin mentioned, Northeastern University is having a reparations conference, which is actually in California. And then in Princeton, New Jersey, folks are organizing and had a recent talk to a class about reparations in Princeton, the need for reparations in Princeton, and also held an event. And the New Jersey Reparations Council held its last virtual public session on February 12th, hosted by the Public Education Narrative Committee. And that's it for my updates for the East region.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Trask with the Midwest region. Lots of activity with some of the groups in Wichita, Kansas. Mary Dean has been working with challenging the local mayor to recognize reparations as a priority, and that is an ongoing process. There's also been some presentations being done and also working on ordinance to submit along with presenting to their Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board. In Minnesota, we got Reparations on the Move Summit being planned for Saturday, where they're working on introducing bills. There are also going to be a subcommittee formed to work on the passing or working on the Enslavement and Disclosure Act that was mentioned earlier. Along that same front, Cam Harvard was at our Midwest Regional meeting this past Tuesday to share updates about that, and we had a good discussion about the details of the enslavement disclosure. Also in that same front, I would like to mention that also the city of Chicago recognized a number of reparations leaders that helped get National Reparations Awareness Day installed for the city of Chicago, and also recognizing the work that they've done in addition to Chicago being one of the cities that does have a disclosure act that they want to amend to add to it later. Also got a little chance to see Carol Mosley Brown there too. It was pretty cool. Also in Kansas City, lots of activities going on there. They've been working with solidarity walks with Pastor Turner. Pastor Turner's doing walks to Washington, D.C. once a month, and they are basically trying to coordinate efforts with him to show solidarity. They also had one of their members, Kevin Wolford, won an award in Kansas City reparation efforts. And if you were interested, there is a link to the virtual walk with Reverend Turner on their Facebook page for that. But they do have a number of events they're kicking off, doing presentations, and using their funding to expand education and strengthen their social media presence. Also in Kansas City, they are also in the process of selecting a research team as far as the Reparations Commission there, and anticipate that team being in place by next month. On Illinois state level, we had one of our 6 public hearings scheduled for 2025 that went really well. Thank you for Robin Rue Simmons for being one of our key speakers there. Our next one's going to be held in April down in Belleville, Illinois. And then our harms report is due for December 2025 for the state of Illinois. Locally in Champaign-Urbana, we got a small grant to do some research and to plan some activities in the program, town hall. So we're working on that down there. And also in Evanston, they had a wonderful event last Saturday featuring some art from Tanika and some other folks. And I don't know if anybody from Evanston wants to speak on this, but this is a series of events that they had. I know I went to the one prior to that focused on Marcus Garvey. And had a lecture from Jamaica speak on that. Been 2 wonderful events so far. They're going to keep trying to do those, I think once a month. So I'm sure they'll be able to kind of give information on that. They did mention in our reparations Midwest meeting that they're going to be giving the next 48 people $25,000 between now and July. So again, they're moving forward regardless of what's been going on the national level there. And then also the mayor of Evanston also proclaimed and recognized Reparations Awareness Day there as well. And I believe that's all. Oh, and then our meeting times are every 4th Tuesday at 1:30. Although May, October, November is the 3rd Tuesday due to us wanting to have our meeting prior to the national meeting. So normally it's the 4th Tuesday, but it's going to be the 3rd Tuesday for May, October, and November at 1:30.
Is it possible you can give me your number or wait till after or put it in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
We're from Detroit. Me and Sydney is on the line. So we want to get back engaged in that.
Absolutely.
Awesome, because we've missed you. Detroit has my heart. So I'm looking forward to getting back out to Detroit soon. Jeff, if you don't want to put in the chat, I could send it to Keith, or did you put it in the chat? Just
put in the chat is
awesome.
No problem.
Thank you. It's great to see you, Keith and Sydney. It's wonderful to see co-chairs from Detroit, Michigan, actually. And Davita is not here. She is our West Regional Leader. Is there anyone from the West that wants to lift up a milestone before we move on to our keynote presentation? Hey, David.
Hi, I would. It's very selfish though. I work for the city of Santa Monica, and the city council just unanimously adopted our proposal for a land back and reparations task force. So I'm dropping that into the chat. I'm really excited about it. It's open to subject matter experts nationwide. So please apply and share widely. There is a $2,500 stipend at the end of the term. And you can reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thank you, David. That's just the type of information we need. So continue to be selfish. Yes.
I have a short update since Sade Cooper isn't here. Our History Colorado is progressing with its study, Justice for Black Coloradans. It's a 2-year study. It does not use the word reparations, and that's so that we could, it's been privately funded by community organizations here, including Reparations Circle Denver and Denver Black Reparations Council. And I see Bobby and Tammy are on this call also. So they're progressing with their studies and looking at ways to involve the community. We have a lot of diverse audiences that need to be influenced. So eventually they'll be looking to try to figure out how to bridge those gaps, and certainly looking to Evanston and other communities who've done that. So that's very exciting. And also I'll put this in the chat also, there is an art exhibit called Repossessions. It's a reparations-based art exhibit featuring Black artists taking ephemera from white families tied to slavery and creating statements of liberation. So that's at the California African Arts Museum. There'll be a curatorial walkthrough with Bridget Cooks, our curator, on March 12th, and then we'll be having a Juneteenth program all in Los Angeles. So I'll put that all in the chat. And I don't know if Bobby or Tammy have any other Denver updates. Thank you.
Where's your Juneteenth programming at?
It's in Los Angeles. This is a traveling exhibition. So it'll be coming to Virginia, to Texas. It'll be going all over the states, we hope, but starting off in Los Angeles.
Amazing. So speaking of that, one thing that I didn't mention is our retreat. Our retreat will be between 1 and 2 days. 1 day is confirmed on June 14th. It is also a Juneteenth moment, and it may be June 13th and 14th. So more information to come, but please do mark your calendars for June 14th in Los Angeles. And we hope to give you more information on that soon. And before we move on, I'm sorry, Bobby, did you have anything before we move on to our presentation?
I don't actually.
Okay, awesome. And make your way to CAM. If you're in LA, it's incredible. There is no cost. There's a beautiful rose garden just outside of the front doors. You can have lunch. There's food vendors and everything. It's a whole vibe. So very excited to introduce our presenter. Our presenter, some of you may remember Dr. Lakeisha David from our symposium in 23. Dr. Lakeisha David is an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign and the director of the beloved African Genetic Genealogy Lab. Her groundbreaking research lies in the intersection of genetic genealogy, anthropology, and restorative justice, focused on addressing the historical trauma of mass human trafficking from Africa. Dr. David's work empowers individuals of African descent to reconnect with their ancestral families and heritage through advanced genetic methodologies. With expertise in analyzing extended genetic genealogies and demographic histories, Dr. David investigates the complex human migration patterns caused by transatlantic human trafficking. Her research extends beyond the academic curiosity, aiming to heal historical wounds and foster a deeper understanding of identity and belonging among African descendants individuals. This includes a focus on African diaspora communities, utilizing tools like identity theory to explore how genetic and cultural reconnections impact self-perception, family identity, and collective memory. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of it because you have access to her bio, but I am going to say that her work is inspiring really the nation that is working on reparations. I was just in a prep meeting yesterday for a keynote I'm delivering later today at 4 o'clock at Northeastern, and they are following Dr. David's work and modeling it after her. And I'm like, hey, I actually know Dr. David. So thank you, Dr. David, for creating this groundbreaking reparative policy and action that connects us to our people. I was fortunate enough to be able to, through DNA, get access to where my ancestors were kidnapped from, and what it did for my person, for my reparations practice, for understanding the case, and even understanding who I am has transformed my life. And she's making possible for Illinois residents now to have access to this. And we hope that this model is considered in all of your initiatives, as we learned from Dr. David. Dr. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me here. It's such a pleasure to be here to talk about genealogy, the things that I do here. Everyone can hear me and see my slides okay? Just, I'm not able to see the.
Yes, we hear you and see your
Okay.
slides.
All right, thank you. So the intro, yeah, I'm glad that that was kind of cut short there. But yeah, this is my passion here. From ancestral roots to reparative policies, genetic genealogy in action here. The purpose of this presentation is to discuss how genetic genealogy works and its role in tracing African ancestry, and to also discuss HR 453, the Family Roots Genealogy Pilot Program here, and a little bit about how policy can support ancestral recovery. So I'm going to assume that everyone in the room here in this Zoom room is in agreement about this part, that there is a disruption in African diasporic histories due to the forced migrations, due to the transatlantic slavery, having severed family ties, languages, cultures, religions, and again, families and communities and so forth. So that presents a challenge. Many descendants of enslaved Africans struggle to do their genealogy, particularly past the 1870 US Census, where that was the first time that African Americans were named, generally speaking. That we were named in certain other records. Some have had some type of success in moving past this brick wall here, but by and large, most do struggle with this. And so, we're fortunate to have genetic genealogy that we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment to help individuals reconnect with their ancestral heritage. But what I really want to emphasize is not only are we getting the general African heritage, but some are also identifying living African relatives here. And that's the part that I really want to focus on. So the power of genetic genealogy does enable us to go beyond the paper trail. And for some, even when we have that paper trail, it's difficult to determine if like the neighbor on the census record is a family or not, or is this a former enslaver or not. And so that DNA fills in those gaps. It is that glue. It is oftentimes what points people in a certain direction of what paper documents to look at. But as Robin Ruth just mentioned, there is a personal impact on it. Individuals have identified African ethnic groups, regions, and even distant relatives through the DNA. And it does have a psychological impact on it. This is happening in adults in their identity development, psychological well-being, sense of belonging. All those things can be documented through academic research, but also in the stories that we tell one another. And so it does have that collective impact. When communities are able to come together and talk about, their successes in finding their family history, it does something. It does something. And it's really more about the experience of it. It's that emotional experience that just can't be put into words sometimes. So we are familiar with African ancestry. As mentioned, African Ancestry, the company, have been really successful in promoting their brand and promoting their product. Lots of folks have taken this test, have been able to develop a little bit more of their family history, have added to their sense of identity. You see here like the different clothes, been able to travel to some of their homelands based off of the results. But I want to take a moment to talk about what is genetic genealogy. And when you go on African Ancestry's website, they will show that they use mitochondrial and Y DNA. And so I want to give an illustration of what that is compared to what the Illinois Project is doing. So here is a depiction of a family tree. At the bottom here are siblings. It's a brother and a sister. And in the moment, I'm going to talk about gender and sex in terms of the chromosome, either having an XX for the sister or the female here, or XY for the brother or the male here. So you see here along the blue, that is the inheritance for the Y chromosome. So it goes from father to, their father, 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 that one lineage there, right? So then the red represents the mitochondrial. This is one that is a little bit different. The mitochondrial gets passed down from the mother to all of their children. So it doesn't matter if it's a male, female, or any other combination of XY. The mother will pass on the mitochondrial to all of the children, generally speaking. And so that's why at the bottom here, you'll see the brother have a little bit of the red. Well, that symbolizes that they inherited the mitochondrial from the mother and the Y from their father. But the sister only inherits the mitochondrial and not the Y. With that being understood, what I want to point out is these represents only two lineages. If you go on African Ancestry's website, or if you look at the work of Rick Kittles, who co-founded African Ancestry, this represents about 1% of the DNA. If you look at the top row where those ancestors are, all of those ancestors are missing from those results, right? And so, people are making meaning off of the single lineage or sometimes the two lineages that they're receiving, but there's so much more information about our histories that's missing that if we switch over to autosomal DNA testing, that we will be able to get, right? So here it is about 1% of the DNA. And just so that you know, this isn't actually a quote from Rick Kittle. So it's not me so much as like throwing shade, but just to inform you of what it is that we have. This also looking at a time frame of 500 to 2,000 years ago. And that's fine when that's all that we have. But if you're talking about repairing from a particular harm, then we really should look at from the last 0 to 500 years, because that is the time frame of the mass human trafficking from Africa. So just by nature of what it is, mitochondrial and Y, that time frame is 500 to 2000. And big surprise, the autosomal DNA does cover and focuses on 0 to 500 years ago. Another thing is that African ancestry, it will identify maybe 0, but often one or more ethnic groups. And we could talk about that at another time. But they do provide a certificate that a few African nations are accepting for dual citizenship. This one represents the autosomal DNA. That's the chromosomes 1 to 22. And if you look in the middle here, let's say that's you, and then your parents, your two parents, and then each parent, each row that gets added, they have two parents, and so forth, right? So this represents more of your ancestors in your family tree when you're using autosomal DNA. That gives us more opportunities to find relatives. I also want to point out, though, that when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, where it's all solid rows, we tend to inherit all of our DNA from those ancestors. But the more distant you go, then sometimes we don't inherit DNA from all of those ancestors. Okay. Even still, doing the autosomal DNA testing does capture more of that history. Because we have so many third, fourth, and fifth cousins, testing one of them, you are likely to pick up DNA from an ancestor that did not happen that you did not inherit. All right, so 23andMe and Ancestry, they pretty much work along this principle, as well as my project at the African Kinship Reunion. 23andMe does provide the Y mitochondrial DNA, but what's really significant here is that 23andMe will build the trees automatically using the DNA. Okay. This is just to show you that there are folks out there doing the work. There are academics, few, that are doing this particular work. What this team has found is that a random African American person born in 1960 to 1965 can expect to inherit DNA from 162 of the 314 African ancestors. So if you're looking at from 0 to 14 generations, from your present, you living, born in 1960, and you're going back 14 generations, and you're counting the first time you get to an African ancestor on that lineage. Remember, we're not just talking about the two, we're talking about representing your whole family tree. Your DNA, what's within you, represents about 162 African ancestors. That's what we're carrying around. If we're able to test other cousins, then we're able to pick up closer to that 314 African ancestors. About to weep a little bit. But yeah, and that's what we're trying to capture. We can capture that story. Yes, it's very possible. Yes, it was so recent enough that this is showing up in the DNA very easily, right? So in comparison, to help, you decide like which way to go with this and what you might do, um, 23andMe Ancestry, and then my project here, takir.org, we use autosomal DNA. We focus on the time frame of 0 to 500 years ago, identifying living relatives. And this is how we're able to also identify living African relatives, because they are also, it's our shared ancestors, right? So when we're identifying a third great grandparent, a fourth great grandparent, that is a person that, the African ancestors also, or the relative is also showing up in their DNA too. So we're able to identify living people on a continent or recently migrated who are relatives of a particular third, fourth, fifth, eighth great grandparent. And we're able to do that very recently, now able to look at up to 20 generations of putting together that family tree. So if you're thinking about how to convert the genetic data into a narrative, you take an autosomal DNA test with a project where you can receive a list of genetic relatives, and then you will group those genetic relatives into groups that sharing the same ancestors. And there's tools out there to help do that. I'm going to try to build genetic family trees if you can. Takir and 23andMe automate this process. I am not promoting 23andMe, especially with what's going on with them right now, but just letting you know that these tools are out there to automate this process. Then you can combine the records like slave manifest, plantation records, your traditional genealogy to the genetic findings to then reconstruct the family tree, filling in missing links that was caused by slavery and forced migration. What's really interesting about this is that once you are able to document one person's, let's say they identify a person born in 1900s or 1800s or whatever that requirement might be, and that one is documented for one person using a paper trail and DNA, that same set of records that will apply to all persons who descend from that ancestor with that DNA trail, even if they don't have the paper trail, because that's just how the DNA would work. Okay. So this is the project website that I was referring to, www.takir.org. This is produced from my lab and partners in the work, where when I'm referring to as automating the process for you. So you take a test, we build a tree if we can. So if we have enough relatives in the database to build the tree for you, then that's what we will do based off of the DNA. In this particular project, we are focusing on that African diaspora connection, so that you will also be able to, let's say this is you and your relative from, let's say, Ghana, for instance. Then you're able to connect with them and make of it, what you two decide, right? So that's the idea there. So that was what was going on. Representative Carol Evans, she took a DNA test and decided why am I paying for this test? We should not have to pay for it. And so that was the idea behind the Illinois 103rd General Assembly House Resolution. It is a policy supporting free DNA testing for Illinois residents to help them trace their African ancestry here. And as I mentioned, if you look at the House resolution, it does name me as the principal investigator. So you'll have both academic support from me and the University of Illinois, as well as policy support. Because anyone who knows Representative Ammons, that she's a champion for the cause. So we have both of that. If you haven't had a chance to look at the full text, you can go there, but it does specify that is about Family Roots, this program. It was adopted by the House of Representatives last year. So with that one, the objective is to help people discover their African heritage, but also it can be used to help any type of genealogy-based reparations. I do want to emphasize that it is reparations in of itself. It is that restitution, it is that rehabilitation, it is all of those things, but also can support other types of reparation causes. This one will provide about 1,500 free kits. It's a pilot program. The idea being that in a few years, about 3 or 4 years or something like that, that we will come back and then be able to offer it for the full state free of charge. So that's the fight that she's fighting there. Eligibility, just simply have to live in Illinois, be at least 18 years old, have an ID. Now, you see that identifying as a Black person is scratched out. You can imagine for legal reasons and things like that, we couldn't really specify that. But the wording of it says to discover your African, roots or African heritage. So, one thing about it though, is that even if, and I'll just put it out there like that, even if a white person take the test, that will still help in helping people to identify potential enslavers. And then if you're looking at inheritance claims and things like that, it actually, in some ways is a benefit. Here's Representative Ammons here in the Department of Anthropology's office with saliva samples, 48 of them from Ghana. I collected them last year. So she's there if you haven't seen her. I got about like 3 more minutes here, I think, something like that. So yeah, the idea is, potentially using this as a model for national reparations policy. It does require institutional backing. We have the National Organization of Black Legislative Women. They also have urged support. So if you look at their what they've adopted is almost the same wording as the Illinois one, exactly. But again, I think we are all familiar with the reparations efforts in California there. And one thing I want to impress on you is that there is a benefit from all of us being in the same repository or being in the same database, because the more of us that's in the same database, the better we're able to identify relatives and piece together that family tree. So I do invite you to consider joining the Takir database for that. So as I wrap up, consider participating in DNA research, and genealogical research, support policy efforts like HR 453, definitely join organizations. I think this is, a thing that this particular group knows. Organize, this is the same thing. You do have Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, but also other projects out there that focus on this. And then, of course, reparation organizations that, support this as well. So Cobra's work is out there, First Repair is out there. If you want to know more about the program itself, we do have an event on this Saturday, where Representative Ammons will be there, myself, and others. Jeffrey Trask will be there to talk about the program.